Hello? You're listening to Singled Out with Gabrielle Denise. Hola, everyone. Welcome back to Singled Out, the show where we tell stories that matter and feature youth doing amazing things in our community. We have an amazing show today, but before we get started, let's go to our moment of inspiration. This moment of inspiration comes from Psalms 56, verse 8. And it says, "You keep track of all of my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle, and you have recorded each one in your book." In this episode today, we're going to be talking about how God really sees and hears us. But I just wanted to encourage any of you who have had a rough week and you felt like maybe God was laughing at you because of your tears. When in all reality, every time we cry, it's a form of worship, and stands near us, and He takes the time to count each of our tears and collect them. So hopefully this is a little bit of inspiration for you. If you would like to sponsor your own moment of inspiration, you can go to my Instagram at singledout_, and go to the contact form. I would love to hear from you. We're going to go on a short commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to have Sofia in the studio with us to talk about how she sang for Jesus and how worship really can stop the flaming arrows of the enemy. So stay tuned. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Singled Out, the show where we tell stories that matter and highlight youth doing amazing things in the community. So today we have Sofia in the studio with us. Hi, it's great to have you here.
Hi, Gabrielle. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm super excited about our topic today. We're talking about how, like, singing for Jesus and how we are supposed to go out into the world and spread His word. So I guess my first question for you is, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so again, my name is Sofia. I live in Manhattan with my husband. I'm a newlywed for almost a year now. Um, and currently, in this season of life, I'm a stay-at-home wife. But I am heavily involved in ministry along with my husband. We do ministry in our church and also in the community in New York City. So that looks very, very different than the typical
Right.
ministry. Um, but it's really exciting, and one of that is the ministry that I function in is worship, as a worship leader. So my heart really burns for worship, and also it burns for seeing people's lives transformed for
Right.
Christ. So that's a little bit about me, I guess.
Okay, yeah, that sounds awesome. So, why did you decide to sing for Jesus, like, specifically?
Yeah, I grew up in a family of musicians. Both of my parents are now pastors, but when I was really little and before I was born, my dad was a traveling worship artist.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
so, yeah, so I remember growing up, he would be gone on tour, and sometimes my mom would go alongside with him because my dad published some albums like in the 90s.
Hmm.
Um, and then he became a pastor more so. I'm the youngest of the family, so more when I grew up, I experienced him more as pastor.
Right.
But with that said, in my family and in my household, music and worshiping Christ was always at the forefront. Like I would wake up and my dad would be on the piano singing to Jesus,
Aw.
and I would just be joining him, or we would have like weekly devotionals and we would sing all together. So it was always a core part of who we were. And then obviously growing up in the church as a pastor's kid, you kind of help
Right.
out everywhere, but especially in the areas that you're gifted in. And my parents realized that the Lord did give me a gift of singing, and I was really shy. I remember I was really, really shy at first. They wanted me to sing on the worship team,
Right.
but I was like, give me some time. Apparently, this
Mm-hmm.
is what they told me, that I told them, give me some time until I'm comfortable. So they did, and then after I said, I'll be fine if I don't sing lead.
Right.
So I remember my sister taught me how to harmonize. So she would be the lead singer, and I would be in the background, kind of just harmonizing on the worship team on Sundays. And so that was what it was for a while until it was later into my teens that I began to be more confident, and
Right.
I felt from the Lord. And one of the few times that I heard the voice of the Lord actually in my life was specifically in regards to worship. I heard him tell me, "This is where I want you," specifically
Right.
in worship. And so since then, I remember my dad prayed over me, kind of like commissioning me into this ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, I led worship in my church, and then I also worked at various churches. I worked for my Christian university as a worship leader as well while I was doing college. And then after that, I was in other churches, and it's just been beautiful to volunteer to work at this too, which has been a
Right.
wild ride. And then now to just do it, in whatever way I can.
Oh, okay.
That's why kind of how it all started and worshiping Jesus.
Oh, that's cool. So does your dad, is he still a pastor?
He is, but right now they're in like a season of transition because
Oh,
they just
okay.
moved to the United States from
Oh,
Guatemala.
okay.
So their church was in Guatemala, and now they kind of handed the reins over, but they
Mm-hmm.
were pastors, for more than 20 years, maybe 30.
Oh, wow.
Um,
That's pretty
um,
cool. I think I had a
yeah,
similar story to you too, because like I started in the church, and I remember being like 6 years old, and they had like the little kids choir, and I remember being a part of that, like just banging my little tambourine, and it was really fun. Like I really, really liked it. So I think singing has also been a part of my life for a lot of it.
oh, that's awesome. I actually didn't know that you
Really?
worship. That's
Yeah.
awesome. It's
But
great to grow up in it and then see how it's still a part of you when you're an adult.
right, exactly. Especially since now, like, I transitioned to being on the praise team at my church. So it's just kind of cool to see how, like, that kind of all, like, was woven in my life.
Yes, since you were little, yeah.
All right. So what do you say that you love most about ministering through song? Because I know other people, some people minister through speaking, and then some people like to do, like, door to door and stuff like that. But what do you think is special about ministering through song specifically?
Um, I think the Lord is such a creative God,
Yeah.
and it's so cool how He made such a thing as music.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that like different melodies, instruments, words can come together and make something so beautiful is like art, and God is an artist. We look around and everything is so beautiful of what He created. So the fact that we can take that, and that in itself points to the beauty of the creator, so we can join in with the creator with art through praising and talking about who He is. I just find that just mind-boggling, thinking about how some little melody that I sing can be worship to who made it all happen. I think it's just a beautiful form of expression.
Right.
And I love it because it can be so diverse and so different.
Mm-hmm.
It's so different in different parts of the world. It can
Right.
sound insanely different. Obviously different languages, different tones. There's hymns, there's contemporary, there's gospel. There's just everything, and you can be singing it loud, like from a stage with a microphone, or you
Right.
can be in your room by yourself, half weeping and singing out this little song. And it doesn't matter because it's all worship to God. And it's
Mm-hmm.
all such a beautiful sound to the Lord when it's coming from hearts that are honest and pure.
Yeah.
And I love it because it's not just something that's like a little thing that you do, but it's actually making a change in the spiritual atmosphere, because we
Mm-hmm.
know that the world that we live in, it's not flesh and blood. But it's by spirits and principalities,
Right,
and so
exactly.
there's a spiritual war going on. And the fact that we can put our armor on with the Word of God, and along with that, attach a creative expression that exalts the Word of God, is just beautiful and powerful. And it's not just something small, but it's a big deal. So that's
Right.
kind of a summary of why I love it so much.
Very well said. And I love what you said because it makes me think about how in the Bible, because Lucifer, he used to be an angel of music. And I see now, like, so much, because I went on, like, this cleanse where I really stopped listening to secular music as much, except for, like, certain, like, throwback songs and stuff like that. And I really noticed a change in just my life and, like, my everyday, how much more peaceful I was, how much more connected to God that I was. And I realized that, like, a lot of the music and stuff that we listen to now is influenced by those spirits. There's spirits in music. And so we have to be so careful about, like, guiding our ears, guarding our hearts, guarding everything, because all it takes is, you know, one song for us to start going down a path of, like, wrong thinking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally get what you mean. Music is so powerful, and I do think, just as you talked about with Lucifer, we have to be wary as Christians. What
Right.
are we feeding our spirit?
Mm-hmm.
It's either going to be good things, things of the Lord, that all things of the Lord are good and pleasing to Him, or things that are not going to be nurturing to our spirit. So every day with a bunch of different things, we have a decision to make.
Right.
But if you think of songs like anthems or things that you're proclaiming, because if you're singing along to something, you kind of are,
Mm-hmm.
what do you want that anthem to be? Do you want to
Right.
be something polluted that's anti-Christ? Or do you want something that's going to be filling to your spirit and your heart and going to water the seed that is in you of the Lord? So
Right.
it's not something small, so I totally get what you mean, and I do think it's important to encourage people, especially young Christians,
Yeah.
right now, like, you can listen to everything under the sun. You open to TikTok and there's a new song that
Right,
is catchy and
exactly.
cool, but probably doesn't have the best message. It's just
Mm-hmm.
good to be aware of what you're listening to.
Yeah, that's so true. And I did want to ask, because I know sometimes you guys go out and sing, like, in the subway in, like, New York City. What has been some of, like, the reactions that you guys see from some of the people that are walking by? Because I know that not everybody's a Christian, you know?
Yeah. I will say it takes a lot of boldness and courage in to go out in a public square. I think of it like it took a lot of courage for the disciples back in the day to, in the public squares, preach about the good news.
Right, exactly.
And we think of Jonah, how God told him to preach to Nineveh, and Nineveh was going wild with the sins that they were doing, and
Exactly.
that's why Jonah was like, I do not want to go there. Like, they're
Right.
probably going to kill me. Okay, thankfully, I don't think anybody's going to be doing that sort of thing in New York if you're preaching. However, there is a lot of spiritual opposition, and there
Right.
could even be like physical opposition or verbal.
Mm-hmm.
People being rude, possibilities of people spitting on you or
Right,
whatever. Things like
exactly.
that. Thankfully, that hasn't ever happened to me.
Okay,
There's
good. I was about to say,
verbal,
ooh.
there's just been verbal opposition or looks or people mocking as they go by.
Right.
But there has been people that are receptive,
Mm-hmm.
that gather around to listen. You obviously see some people breaking down crying or staying for a while afterwards and asking questions, asking
Right.
how they can get connected with the church or if we know of any church,
Mm-hmm.
asking for prayer. Like, it is definitely making a change in the atmosphere, and something that I've been learning about recently is it's that the world is the Lord's. But there is
Right.
such a thing as like spiritual territory. There is a lot of oppression in certain cities or in certain parts of the world because
Right.
there's a lot of darkness going on.
There is.
When we proclaim the good news, when we're worshiping publicly in an area that's proclaiming back spiritual territory for the Lord and saying this is the Lord's land and we're not going to let darkness completely overcome it. And I
Right.
think that's why it's so important to be doing that in the city, and we see the positive responses that come alongside that, even though there are some negative ones too.
Right. There always will
Okay.
be.
Yeah, it just builds up your courage, honestly, and it builds you up to really think like, why is there so much opposition? If this is just fake, like, why are there so many people
Right.
that you can literally see them like just internally having such angry reactions? But we
Right.
have to keep going.
That actually kind of, like, segues really well into, like, the last question. So, how do you combat spiritual opposition with worship?
Hmm. Um, I I think it's really important to know the role that worship had in the Bible, specifically in regards to war times.
Right.
How they used to put the worshipers in the front, which is just, again, it's like the battlefront. Like, it's like putting your armor of worship, it's like your first line of defense against the enemy.
Right.
And so we see so many times in the Bible how it says, like, not word for word, but, like when you're going through something like struggling or suffering, the Bible calls us to worship. That's our first line of defense.
Right, yeah.
Any type of spiritual oppression or opposition, we're called to worship, because that changes the atmosphere. That takes the power away from the enemy. And so I love it so much because it's a direct response to obedience to what the Lord calls us to do.
Right.
Because it changes the atmosphere and it breaks chains.
Yeah, and I love that, especially in the Bible. Like, I've been reading about Job and how he, like, worshiped God through prayer. But even David, going out in the streets and really just breaking loose and people thinking that something was wrong with him. But I think that as Christians, when we worship, it can look different for everybody. Maybe some people don't really love singing, but maybe they worship God through just silent prayers, or maybe some people worship God through tears. There's many different ways I feel that we can, like, worship God, but I do think it's beautiful how there's not really a specific way to do things. We don't have to always sing a song or sing this certain song for it to be worship to God, and that he hears us, whichever way that it's done, as long as we do it in a way that's glorifying to him.
Yeah, I think exactly, like, you could be just playing the piano for the Lord, you could be singing a song in your room, you could be leading worship. Like, there's all these different ways, but the Lord looks at our heart. And I think one of the biggest things is music is one avenue that's really special and creative and that the Lord calls us to.
Right.
Our lives, living out our lives in obedience, is what's true worship.
Yeah, that's true.
And so true worship will seep into your musical worship.
Yeah, and that's true, because I know that there's been times where I went to a worship service and my life wasn't lining up with the Bible, and I knew it, and my heart wasn't really in the worship. It's like, it's really hard to have your heart into worship if your life doesn't correspond and you're not, like, walking with God. It's just it all kind of feels like fake a little bit.
Right. Yep. Because it's like you can't trick your mouth into saying something that your heart really isn't holding on to.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, well, that is awesome. It's been so great to have you on the show. Would you just tell the people how they could, like, get in contact with you, or maybe if they wanted to come and just, like, see a show in New York sometimes when you guys are, like, performing? Yeah.
Yeah, so as of right now, my main point of social media would be my Instagram. My Instagram is Sweetly Sofia. SweetySofiaa. So it's 2 A's at the end. And then in regards to how we worship, honestly, as of right now, with my husband, we're being, like, randomly booked. Like, it's kind of weird. Like, last month we were in two churches that just reached out to us. This week we're doing worship for a youth conference that reached out to us. So we're kind of, like, hopping all over the place.
Right, okay.
The current church that we're attending that does great worship in New York City and does worship in the subways as well, that I would recommend, is called King's Church NYC.
Okay,
so you can find them on Instagram as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Do you have anything else that you would like to say to the audience?
Sure. I'll just say, keep your eyes on the prize. And the prize is Jesus first and foremost, and he'll fill your heart more than anything can.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to go on a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we're going to have the song of the week. Today's song of the week is an epic new single by artist Ecclesia called Baptized in the Fire. I'm sure y'all have probably never heard this song before, but as soon as I heard it, I knew I had to feature it on Song of the Week because it is one of those songs that will definitely get you up and dancing. So the song starts with like a really nice heavy R&B vibe, and then it kind of goes towards a more worshipful, slow vibe. Then after that, it switches to a Caribbean chant and finishes with a really nice surprise that ties the whole song together. I definitely give this song a 1 out of 10 for repetitiveness because there is a little bit of repetitiveness with the chant, but the overall message of the song is that as Christians we are to be baptized in the fire. So without further ado, here is your song of the week, Baptized in Fire by Ecclesia. That was today's episode of Singled Out. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you follow us on Instagram as singleout._, where we share more stories that matter and quotes for the rest of your week. Also, make sure you visit www.positivelygabriellerice.com for more information about what is going on in this awesome community. I'll see you next week. Bye.